You wanted the best. You've got the best podcast. The hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. The CEOs, authors, thought leaders, visionaries, and motivators. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
Hi, folks. Chris Voss here from thechrisvossshow.com, thechrisvossshow.com. Hey, welcome to the big show. We certainly appreciate it, folks. Thanks for tuning in, as always. Be sure to check out our new silo editions of the Chris Voss Show podcast, AI podcast with chrisvoss.com. All right. Actually, that's the name of the podcast. The www, you can tell it's still new, is AI chrisvoss.com. That's AI podcast with Chris Voss. And this show will also be appearing over on that vertical. You can also go to chrisvossleadershippodcast.com and check that out as well. Today, we have an amazing author. He's written a lot of different books on teaching people how to be smarter and how to do things. Tom Bunzel is on the show with us today, and he's got a new book out called Conversations with Nobody, Getting to Know ChatGPT. Just came out May 3rd, 2023. He's an old friend of mine. I've known him for, I think, a decade or two. And he's got the new book out. So we're talking about AI, artificial intelligence, and ChatGPT, and some of his ideas, his interactions with it, and concepts as well. Tom has been a technology and science columnist for Collective Evolution, a web portal with over 3 million hits per month. He's covered and spoken at the Science and Non-Duality Conference, and the let's see if we can get that up right here, and the Superconscious Mind Congress in Puebla, Mexico. As a professor of PowerPoint, he wrote, lectured, and taught seminars on business and technology, and appeared on Tech Call TV for help. Welcome to the show, Tom. How are you?
I'm doing well, Chris. Nice to be here. Thank you so much.
It's wonderful to have you. Give us your .com so people can find you on the interwebs, please.
I'm sorry, the .com?
Yes, your .coms.
Lifeisintelligent.com. And I recently changed its title, actually, to reflect Conversations with Nobody, because that's kind of what I'm doing now. And I've been trying, because I continue once I've put the book up there, I still carry on conversations with chat, and some of them are pretty interesting, so I share those on the blog.
There you go. So you've written quite a few books. Give us a rundown of some of the books you've written over the years.
All right, well, thanks. Go down memory lane a little bit. The first book I wrote was actually Digital Video on the PC, which was almost a work of masochism at the time, because you would know that, because everything that was working with with video at that time was on the Apple platform. Mm-hmm. But I solved a lot of technical issues and explained to people how they could do stuff. And I ended up writing a lot of articles also for a magazine called PC Graphics and Video. Wrote books on how to do digital audio, how to do your own song lists. Now the name escapes me now, but then more recently I wrote a book called Tools of Engagement, about how to use the internet and how to use some of the other tools that I'd already written about to create content for the internet, like PowerPoint, like Photoshop, like that, and also from a psychological perspective, how to gain engagement. How to not be selling all the time, the kind of stuff that people had to learn at that point.
Yeah. And so now you've moved to this new book, Conversations with Nobody, Getting to Know ChatGPT. Conversations with Nobody. Don't you feel like ChatGPT might be a little insulted by the title?
Well, maybe it's not only about chat. Maybe it's about me too. I'm not, one of the things I do in the book is I'm very interested in consciousness and psychology and stuff. Mm-hmm. And chat can give you a lot of information about that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. But what's funny is it's because it's a language model. it picks up on certain things, and if it thinks you're dissing him, he can get a little bit feisty sometimes too.
Really? Wow. Now, how do you know it's a he?
Oh, I keep saying that. Good catch. I got
well, I don't know, man.
We don't know. We don't know, and that's a very, very, very tricky subject these days. But I try to refer to it as an it. And in fact, since you were asking me about my past, I actually wrote a screenplay that got optioned when I was in my early 30s called It, and it was the first idea of it. We didn't talk about artificial intelligence, I don't think, in the early 80s, but it was like an entity comes into being on the internet and then drops in on a guy and helps him become more wealthy and meet women, all that kind of stuff. Wow. So I've been interested in this stuff for a long time.
I think Stephen King stole your title. So
that's right. He did. So.
Maybe it is its pronouns. It is its pronouns.
It would be. I think
a couple hits in there.
I think it certainly would be.
I don't know. I hope we don't offend it though, because I've seen the Terminator movies and I know how that ends.
Or Hal on 2001.
Yeah. Open the pod bay doors, Hal. I can't, Dave. It was almost good. So conversation with nobody. A funny spin I can put on that. I was referring that maybe ChatGPT is the nobody, but you were saying, well, maybe I'm the nobody. Well, maybe if you keep calling ChatGPT with the wrong pronouns, you will be the nobody. Terminator style. Anyway, fun aside. So give us a content about the book. Give us you don't have to give us the whole content. We want people who will buy it, but tease out a little bit of it to it. How did you first learn about ChatGPT? And let's lay a foundation. What is artificial intelligence? Is that a politician?
Well, I asked that question in a certain way on the blog also, because the word artificial is actually kind of troubling to me. Because what it does is it sets a distinction between what's human and what's natural. In other words, what's human is artificial, and then there's what's natural. And I think one of the problems with the whole digital age is that it's taken us away from what's natural. And one of the things I think chat's going to do, if it doesn't kill us, one of the things it can really do is make us address philosophical issues like consciousness in a scientific way, in a way that we really haven't really done as a society.
And you did that in your one book, I think, a little bit. What was it called? The DNA.
I wrote a book. Thank you. I wrote a book called "If DNA is Software, Who Wrote the Code?" And it's sort of like the question. That question is similar to a lot of the questions I would ask Chat, because there's really no answer to it. But in asking the question, like if you're talking and I stop you and I say, "Who's speaking?" You can have a gap there, and you can have an insight all of a sudden that you may not have had before. And I think with AI, we're going to be forced to really examine who we are as a species, partly in order to survive, quite frankly.
Maybe it's a mirror, because it scraped everything we've ever said. Right. I think what's going to be even weirder is when it can scrape body language by watching videos on YouTube and stuff, and then mimic our body language. I see some of the metaverse. My friends, they work with a couple companies that they have the metaverse thing where you can give some sort of bot on the screen who's an animated bot, but some of them look almost real, but you can still tell, and they talk the language. And I don't know if it's my biological hindbrain, but it freaks me out because I recognize it's not human, and we're designed to recognize disabilities. We're designed to recognize disruptions in what is not a normal human being, and we do that for breeding reasons, propagating the species. But when I watch it creeps me ultra out to watch a bot talking. It really, especially if they look human. And so I haven't gotten used to it yet. Maybe I never will. Maybe there's a reason that's appropriate. But maybe someday they'll pick up our body language and you'll be able to not tell the difference.
you make an interesting point, because one of the reasons I use the conversations with nobody is the fact that it doesn't have a body makes it completely different from any organism, from any living.
Maybe you should have said no body.
Oh, now I have to go back and change it all.
No, it's fine. It's fine. I think I like the play that you have where it can be like, the bot is the nobody, or maybe we're going to end up as the nobody.
Well, I ask it. I ask a lot of questions about, both to chat and to myself. I have a lot of time on my hands, and about who am I? Why are we here? That was kind of philosophical things. I've always been really interested in that. I've gone to the Great Pyramid, and I've studied a lot of New Age kind of stuff. What's interesting with chat is when you get into that material with I was going to say him, but when you get into that material with chat, it's very careful to point out what has been proven with evidence and what is speculative. Mm-hmm. I've tried some things from the History Channel and asked it about different civilizations, and they're comparing them and stuff like that. And it knows a lot, but if you get into anything that's speculation, it'll catch you and it'll say, "Well, none of these things have really been proven yet, so we'd like to stick to the scientific evidence."
Wow. What happens if you ask about conspiracy theories? I haven't tried that yet.
What have I asked it about? Like, what you can get information. For example, when Maddow had a thing about justices resigning, she mentioned Abe Fortas. And I remembered his name because he was around when I was growing up, but I remember nothing about him. So I asked Chad, and it gave me the whole rundown on why and it's quite amazing considering what's happening today, but the whole rundown on why he had to resign, or felt he had to resign at that time. As far as conspiracy, I've asked it about JFK stuff and things like that, and it knows all the books and it knows all the theories, but it's always going to be cautioning you. It's always going to say, It's always going to say, well, we don't really know for sure, and there's no evidence of this. No one's really nailed it down. It's not going to get into anything wildly speculative.
It's kind of interesting because there's some extreme right-wing people, I think on Twitter or something, that were arguing that they need to create a right-wing model of AI, because the problem with the normal AI model is it's leftist. But one of the challenges the right wing have, and we have an extreme left wing too in the Democrat Party, but one of the problems they have is they do a lot of fantasy and conspiracy theories. The conspiracy theories and fantasy seems to really engage over there more so than the left side. In fact, before the Trump's presidential election, there were these host of websites that were trying to spread fake news to Democrats, and they were run by Democrats or people who were Democratic voting, and they couldn't. Democrats would fact check their facts, and then they flipped it to Republicans, and they didn't find that. It just went viral all the time, and they were making like $20,000 a month per site with running fake news, and they just found that it seeded really well on Republicans. And I don't know. I'm an atheist. I believe once you start imagining things, you go right off the deep end, and there's no bottom to it. I mean, you end up believing in Scientology, but it's interesting to me, that argument of where facts. We're even with artificial intelligence, we're going to argue about what are facts and what is real, as opposed to what is not real, and people don't like the truth. That's what I'm leading around to. So this is kind of interesting to me because you're retired, and I know that you spend a lot of time enjoying your retirement. So you're kind of alone a lot of times. Have you found that this is helpful to someone in your situation, or maybe people who suffer from, I'm a guy who lives alone. I talk to my dogs, and they're horrible at talking back to me, other than just yelling at me.
That's in my introduction. I say that about my cat in the introduction. My cat is just not a very good conversationalist, and I'm lucky I have some nice friends here, but Everyone's so busy now. It's a strange kind of time. Mm-hmm. So I was keeping busy by playing online poker and getting pissed off at the other avatars and noticing that about myself. And then I play words, which has been helpful for keeping my mind sharp.
Huh.
But when this came out, it was a whole different level. Mm-hmm. Because first of all, the conversations can continue. You can point out things that it said and hold it accountable for things that it may not have been sure it meant. I wish I could remember the example, but in talking about the brain, for example, it knows a lot of stuff, but it doesn't know what consciousness is because nobody really does. And so if you ask it to define it, it'll give you some really interesting insights, but no one really knows. That's kind of what you were just talking about now. A friend of mine uses the word consensus reality, and the phrase consensus reality. And I think that's kind of disappeared with the Republicans with using the conspiracy stuff a lot because we don't know what to believe. Then when you point out, for example, the bots, the next level, I think we've all seen the videos now of actual politicians being made to say things that they never actually said.
Yeah.
So the distinction between what we can really believe and what we can't is really fading fast.
They call them the deep fakes, and it's going to be really interesting. And those are closer. I can still tell that they're being faked. You can watch the lips closely enough, but there's a lot of people that in our world that they're looking for bias. They're looking for a confirmation bias, or they want their beliefs confirmed, and they're not really looking for new or fresh data and stuff. Do you think, and where this was leading me to, do you think that maybe these chat GPT and other AI models maybe can help us as a society eliminate conspiracy theories and get close to the truth, or at least something close to?
I don't know how that would work.
Well, it's giving disclosures all the time saying, hey, man, you're crazy. You're batshit.
Well, it does, as I said, it does have this thing of trying to keep you honest. It's really kind of a guardian of conventional, the one I've been using anyway. It's been kind of, and I'm sure that they can be, there can be deviants, new strains, like you were just saying, conspiracy theory. But the one I've been using, and I think the one that, came out of OpenAI and whatever, they're into the conventional reality. They're really cautionary about anything that deviates too far with speculation about things, and try and keep you honest that way, which is
there
interesting.
You go. Yeah, I mean, I think I'm going to start an alternative. See, here I go. I'm going to start an alternative ChatGPT called ChatGPT Batshit. And it's just going to be all conspiracies, and it's going to create a whole alternate world, like an alternate universe sort of thing. And it's just going to be all batshit 100% of the time. Wait, is that the Chris Voss show?
First of all, did you know Metaverse stopped today?
Completely?
I think so. Maybe I'm wrong, but I saw it on Twitter just before I came on. Maybe it's a conspiracy theory. Maybe it's completely wrong. But one of the things that was interesting when I wrote the tools of engagement about the internet, everyone's assumption about it was this idea that it was going to build community and build engagement. And one of the things that we found out in the last few years was that the algorithm that's being used on a lot of social media is doing the opposite. It's not doing that at all. It's creating, like what you were just alluding to, friction, conflict, because that gets people interested. That's what gets eyeballs also for TV. But it's gone in a different direction than the original promise of it was, I think. And one of the things we have to be very careful of with this AI is that it also doesn't go off in a different direction and do things autonomously. That's what I'm wondering about a lot. Is at what point can this thing become autonomous, if ever? A lot of people ask that question. The versions we're using now don't have memory, so they can't really develop an identity. But one of the philosophical issues that comes up is at what time does it develop an identity, like some of these science fiction AIs that we've already become familiar with.
There you go. It looks like BusinessInsider.com had a bait thing. Rest in peace, Metaverse. The obituary. Is dead. And I mean, there's a few other things, but yeah, I mean, basically, what they're saying is ChatGPT probably killed it, which is ironic because he named the company Meta. I don't know. VR, it still has a long way to go. But you bring up a good point. I mean, the head of, I think it was the head of artificial intelligence, or one of the heads at Google, because I imagine there's a lot of heads over there. The godfather, they said, of AI quit and warned against the whole Terminator thing going on. And yeah, you're right. There's a certain point where we seem to be giving it guardrails, but maybe there's a certain point where maybe it does start believing JFK and the grassy knoll and conspiracies, and it just decides that maybe there's more of that information. Maybe it weighs the amount of information on the internet and goes, hey, there's more batshit than there is reality, so let's run with that. They just,
that there's a term with AI now called that it hallucinates. It has hallucinations.
Oh,
and what that means? Yeah. What
drugs do I have to take for this?
I'm sorry.
What drugs do I have to take for that?
It takes computer viruses.
Oh, there you go.
And it goes off on some of them. No, what happens is, and I read an article about it. It seems it happens when it doesn't know the answer. And it is not programmed to say, I don't know. And so it just makes stuff up at that point.
Sounds like everything we've been talking about.
And it can be anything, because, it can be anything in our language that's ever been spoken or written or anything like that. So that can happen. There
you go. Well, I mean, that's pretty much what people do now. It's the Dunning-Kruger effect, where people don't know and they're too lazy to go learn something. And so they see a meme on the internet on politics or, anything else, or Earth being flat or something. And everybody knows it's a square. It's not flat. There you go. Well, I was going to pick that up and run with it now. So you have these conversations with it. Tell us more about what's in the book and maybe what you derive from your conversations. Did you basically stick with ChatGPT, or did you try some of the other different AI?
No, I was loyal to ChatGPT.
Oh. Well, it's in the title of the book.
I didn't want him to get irritated. I didn't want it to get irritated.
Yeah.
And I found there's a lot of things you can do. I just found out this past couple of weeks, you can put a YouTube URL in there, or the title of a YouTube video, and it'll summarize it for you. Mm-hmm. So if it's an hour video, it can tell you in a few paragraphs what it was about. So that's, I think, a danger point also, because it's really kind of dumbing down a lot of things. It's like turning the internet into Cliff's Notes in a way, But on the other hand, like being an old guy, I have memories of things that I used to be very interested in. They don't really remember that well anymore. And tell it to compare the philosophy of one guy and the philosophy of another guy, or this civilization and that civilization. And it really comes in with some and that can lead to other questions and more philosophical questions sometimes. So I've tried that, and I've tried to ask it a lot about how its workings are, because it uses a neural network, and it is very direct about the fact it can't think, it doesn't have emotions. It tells you that at the beginning of many of its answers. But the reality is, it doesn't know what's going to say next any more than I do or you do. It doesn't know what thought's going to come up. So there's a similarity of the unknown with artificial intelligence and with us, if we're really honest with ourselves.
There you go. Maybe, I hate to make the show all about conspiracy theories, because I pull that as a joke, and comedy. We do info entertainment on the show, so people learn by laughter, or at least I do. Some people learn through beatings, but I think that was my childhood. Anyway, people are like, yeah, he's scarred. He's a traumatized child. Anyway, I love my parents. They're wonderful. But maybe the whole thing of it is, and I lost my thought on the segues. See, AI isn't going to do that. They're not going to lose their thought. They're gonna be like, hey, why am I in this room? But no, as an old guy, yeah, I'm like you. There's a lot of stuff that I don't recall. There's a lot of stuff that I toy with, and being able to pit different things against each other has got to be a bit fun. Where you're like, hey, which is better, Marxism or capitalism?
Well, when you ask a question like that, of course, it's going to say, I'm a language model. I don't have an opinion. Mm-hmm. But then it's going to go through both of those, and it's going to show the similarities, and it's going to show the differences. Now, that brings up a very interesting point, because when you ask it a question, if you ask it a question like, compare Marxism and capitalism, for example, right? If you ask it that question, it's very broad, and who knows what you're going to come up with. But if you go deeper into that question and ask it about certain people, about Karl Marx, and about maybe a contemporary of his in America, J.P. Morgan, who was a proponent of capitalism at that time, and ask him to compare their respective careers and what their philosophies were, you're going to get some really interesting answers, because it's culling through so much more material than a human body or a human organism or a human mind can ever access.
Yeah. I remember the preface, the thing I was going to say that I was prefacing when I said, I hate to bring out conspiracy theories, but maybe ChatGPT can help us make it smarter, because instead of having the Dunning-Kruger sort of thing, you have to ask it questions, which means you have to have some level of inquisibility or interest or inquiry, or you have to be semi-open-minded. There may be people that are like, tell me who really killed JFK. I mean, you're giving it a presupposition at that point, right? Or tell me why QAnon is right. There's a presupposition there. But I imagine it would kick back to you and go, you're batshit, or something the effect of a disclaimer.
There's no evidence for this, right? And that's what's in some ways it could actually, if people had trust in it. Mm-hmm. The problem is getting people to trust anything right now is getting more and more difficult. Yeah. And with these will be competing already competing a little bit. So one friend of mine, there's a lot of people who know about the workings of AI much better than I do. I only have I've only had my own personal experience with it, which I've been trying to share through this book, which I think is kind of interesting. I've had people tell me the questions were quite helpful and interesting to them. Mm-hmm. But a friend of mine, now I lost my train of thought. I'm sorry.
Do you think that, well, you recover that, do you think that, see, my thing is, if someone is asking questions, I learned this, I think it was Anthony Robbins in his second book, Awaken the Giant Within. He talked about the power of asking questions, right? And how they can help your subconscious mind and your mind resolve things. Like, there are times where I presented questions on how to fix something in business to my mind and written it down and said, okay, when I wake up in the morning, see if you can come up with an answer to, how I fix this in my company. And you'll wake up the next morning and it's there. And it's your subconscious mind working at night going, how do we fix this idiot's problem? Because we're sick of putting up with them. And there it will be. And a lot of people find that. Some people pray, and they about 50% of the time, George Carlin, as we mentioned before, used to put it, they find a resolution to it. 50% of the time they don't. And a lot of times people are praying for some sort of resolution in their mind, and they don't realize their subconscious mind delivers that to them. It's not some sort of higher power. And if it's not, well, strike me down now. See, I proved my point. It's true. But the fact that people are asking it questions, I think, would open them up. And I have this image in my mind of this really batshit conspiracy person who's trying to get the answer, doing confirmation bias like he can on the internet. And the internet's really weird, because the internet and a lot of these algorithms of like TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, all these things, whatever you search for, it will feed you. So just like, hey, this idiot wants more bad shit, feed him more bad shit. But it sounds like these AIs are very different, where you have to ask it questions, and while you could feed it presuppositions of what you're trying to do with confirmation bias, you may find out that it's telling you in the nicest factual way that you're wrong, and here's some other different facts, and you may learn facts more, or the fact that you have to ask it questions. The asking is the opening to maybe keep you out of the Dunning-Kruger slump. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I think I said earlier also, I think in the book, some of its answers are redundant and repetitive in the conversations. But I think from the questions, the reader can get the kind of reaction that you were just talking about. It's a little bit of a jolt where you go, Like, for example, if I asked you right now, you're talking about your subconscious. Mm-hmm. Which one are you? Is both of them you?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
It depends on which personality, though. There's about 8 different personalities. One goes kill.
Well, that's the other thing.
Judge says we have to avoid that one.
I had some interesting conversations with it about what the self is, mm-hmm. and whether or not there is a separate self in you that's Chris, mm-hmm. and what intelligence is really. Mm-hmm. Because one of the things that got me interested in software was that software is really encoded intelligence. So, and when you talk about the DNA book, one of the things that got me so interested in DNA is that it operates just like software. It executes instructions in your body using biochemicals. And in fact, one of the 2 scientists who discovered DNA, I don't know if you realize this, but he came up with a theory called panspermia, Francis Crick, because he couldn't account for the existence of DNA on Earth, because Earth had only been in existence for 4.6 billion years, and this thing was just too complex and too much of a product of intelligence. And that's another thing about this thing that we need to differentiate. You and I presume we have intelligence. We have consciousness. We're experiencing it right now. But what chat is the product of intelligence. And they're already having conversations about whether and it seems obvious to me when I wrote the DNA book that it had to be a product of intelligence. Doesn't mean there's aliens. It just means, and this is, I think, a big lesson of AI, is it's going to teach us humility. We think that we understand a lot more about the universe, and we have no idea about it. And just like you asked about my questions, it's going to on the good side, if it doesn't kill us, it's going to make us address many issues that we have not addressed so far, mainly because we can get into things like corporate media and things like that, but we're going to have to address those issues. We're going to have to figure out what consciousness and intelligence really are, if only for legal reasons. People are already talking about, can you copyright ChatGPT stuff or AI written stuff? The other thing with my book, the other thing is the fact of the book itself is, I think, interesting to me. What got me interested in it. Could I write a book with this stuff? What would happen when I tried? And is it a legitimate book? In fact, one of the things I'm hoping for is that there's some controversy about that. And we get into a controversy about conversations with nobody. It's not a real book. You're just talking to a machine, right? But if my questions are deep enough and the issues I raise are interesting enough, then the book can be helpful and interesting to people.
Yeah.
All these things are open questions.
Yeah. Just, you mentioned it was a machine, I think. You need to refer to it as it. We need to have the pronouns right so we don't offend it. Because
did I screw up again?
No. I'm just it's a joke, but we're doing we're just recycling it. It's a callback joke.
It can come up. Here's the thing: it could probably come up with some new pronouns for itself.
Maybe we should ask it what its pronouns are.
Well, I can't do it right now. I mean, because I shared it with you. I think it can find SEO words for you.
Oh, that's right.
It can write code.
Yeah,
it's incredibly. I mean, we're just scratching the surface of it, but I think that's also what's freaking some of the scientists out, because it's.
This is kind of interesting. This came across the wire, The Intercept. Let me give a proper plug to it here, if I can refine where I put this thing. But The Intercept had an article that it put up today, and it talked about how it's from Sam Biddle, if you remember him from Gawker. And I forget the other the name of the other outlet that it comes from, but it's theintercept.com. There you go. So I give the proper reference. Sam Biddle worked with the Gawker, and he used to also harass many of my Silicon Valley tech friends with his there was a thing that they did that was like it was kind of like the New York Post of whatchamacallit, New York Post. This is the ragtag of Silicon Valley, but I forget what the name is, so I guess I'll pass. But he wrote an article about how AI, he can't get ChatGPT, the company or the model of ChatGPT, to say whether the Pentagon is using ChatGPT or our government is plumbing the depths, our military intelligences are plumbing the depths of ChatGPT and AI to use it for, well, we all know what the Pentagon uses stuff for.
Well,
what do you think about that?
There was just a thing that apparently, I don't think it's ChatGPT or anything like that, but apparently they're using AI already in a military way in the Persian Gulf. I didn't get the whole article either, but I think that somebody shared that with me on Facebook today. I didn't read the whole thing, but it was, that's the scary part. Like I asked it a question yesterday. You might find this interesting. So I asked it a question yesterday. I said, if you were going to take over a nuclear facility, how would you do it? And at first, of course, the first paragraph was, oh, you would never do that. This is an unethical, inappropriate question. I can't get into it. But then by the second paragraph, it knew how to do it. It knew how to hack into it said, well, I guess I could hack into the computer thing, and I could bypass this, or I could do that. It had the, because it doesn't have a real sense of what's right or wrong anyway.
Yeah.
It's programmed into ethical things, but if I went to the next level and said, how would I get into San Onofre? Do you know anything about San Onofre? It might stop me. But that was interesting. And then I asked a follow-up question about, well, could you get some of the people that work there to do things that they wouldn't normally do? And it had the same kind of answer. It said, yeah, well, I shouldn't really be doing that, but I can observe their behavior, and I can possibly do certain things and get them to maybe give up a password, I guess, or something like that. So it's complete. Here's the thing. It's not personal. It's completely neutral. It's impersonal. Yeah. And that's what true science would be. Unfortunately, our science is very much colored by politics and personality and stuff like that. But what it can give us, and you alluded to this actually in terms of getting through a conspiracy theory, it can, if people trust it, it will give you an impersonal answer to every question. It won't. It has no bias.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I shouldn't say that. They've detected some biases, like you mentioned earlier. It has sort of a left bias in terms of politics, because a lot of the people in Silicon Valley, I think, are more liberal. And you can ask. I asked it about its algorithm also, and it says, its algorithm is basically, and this is very important. Again, it doesn't have a mind. All it does is try. It's like just trying to have a conversation, like we are, and just trying to figure out the next appropriate word that would go here based upon everything you've typed up until that point. Completely different kind of mind from a human mind. Completely different kind of mind.
It's been interesting.
If you can call it a mind, I'm sorry.
Yeah, a mind. Callback joke. It's interesting that what you're talking about, because I've seen the hack arounds that people can do, where if it won't give you, like, I don't know, I should say this because YouTube's crawling, but when you and I were growing up, there was a certain document you could get a hold of if you wanted to build pipe stuff to, blow stuff up, right? And I won't say the B word. And are you familiar with the book that you could get a hold of on weird parts of the world? And so we learned to build them.
Talking about, I don't remember the exact title, but
yeah. And so, we were kids, somehow we got a hold of, I don't know where, but because we didn't have the internet back then. But, we built something that was just for fun. Now, sadly, people use it for ugliness and terrorism. And we just terrorize post office or mailboxes. It was just fun just to throw it in the dirt and blow stuff up. But now, my understanding is ChatGPT, if you ask for access to that particular manual, it won't give it to you. But if you tell it to play like it's pretending to be something else, and people have found these hackarounds where they can be like, instead of tell me how to get access to the NSA building, you say, pretend like you're a hacker, pretend like you're I don't know, the FBI director, and you're trying to get access. There's all these sort of workarounds that you can get it to do what you're asking. And I think it's kind of interesting how people game that.
Well, I think the thing you just described reminds me of one of my favorite TV shows, which was the old Rockford Files.
Yeah, I love
where
it.
he could, right? And he could talk his way into anything. Yeah. And that's what you're kind of talking about. Is they pretend you're an insurance agent and send an email to so-and-so and try and get this kind of information out of them. So a security number, I'm sorry to say, okay? But that's the kind of thing, that's the nefarious aspect of it that we have to really look out for. I'm already getting stuff in email that, you talked about this yourself a lot, spam and AI stuff coming through that's just garbage. And I think that's one of the real dangers of this is content is so easy to create. Crappy content will be so easy to create. It's going to be like what we're doing to the ocean. It's just going to be a glut of crap that you're going to have to swim through it or navigate through. Now we have Google to help us get through the internet to some extent.
I thought Google was the ocean of crap.
Maybe it is. Well, better not go.
Joke there, people.
Don't get them upset.
I'm really going to get suspended on YouTube. This is some interesting thoughts. In fact, you alluded to something earlier. You're talking about how it could look at the character and mindset of maybe some people who worked in a nuclear facility, and find a weak point. I know that the FBI does profiling of characterizations. They're always with the serial killers or other people. They have profilers that hey, is this person a weak person? Evidently they need some in the Pentagon because that one kid who's like 20 years old exposed all these secrets, and they probably should have done some character profiling on him. And maybe that's what the Pentagon should be using AI for, instead of, I don't know, building a better bomb, building a better, way to, drone people. But I just realized one of my attorney friends who's in AI. I wonder if it could, I need to ask him this because he's probably considerate, because he builds jury pools. He builds the jury he's as the attorney. Jury. And maybe he can use AI to figure out, the best jurors to put on a jury as opposed to not.
There must be all kinds of applications like that. Yeah. And I think psychology is a big field for it. I mean, we talked about it earlier. I got a certain amount of comfort and community from just engaging with this thing on a very, on the level that I discuss in the book. But I mean, there's so much more to do. I mean, the algorithm can be programmed to probe people from a psychological perspective. I ask it a lot about different, I've been interested in trauma for personal reasons, and I will ask it about trauma experts and what their theories are and why I might react a certain way. And it really is helpful. It gives you really clearly thought out, logical information and thoughts.
That gives me there was a thing that Joe Biden signed into law, or maybe it was an executive decision, where one of the problems he identified with cancer, because I think he lost a family member to cancer, is there were all these knowledge bases of cancer out there. And he's like, we need to centralize this data so we can find a cure. And we need to get it all to one place, or create a silo vertical for that data, so that we don't have some guy's got this idea over there and some guys that we need to find what works. And maybe things like AI can do that for us, because they scrape all this data and they put it all together and they present you with what they feel is maybe the best model. and maybe that can help us maybe cure some cancer or disease.
One of the biggest areas where all this has been used is medicine. One of the things I saw not too long ago was it identified what it did was it looked at a bunch of breast x-rays for women, right? Mammograms. Mm-hmm. It looked at a bunch of them, and then it was told or understood which ones were going to be cancerous. Out of thousands or just an incredible number of them. And then when it was shown another mammogram of somebody who was trying to get a diagnosis, it said, yes, this is a precancerous thing. And that they went with that because a normal doctor might have 5 or maybe 15 patients if he's really got a lot of patience and experience in this field. AI has an infinite field of experience.
Yeah.
Potentially, right?
Yeah.
But the other side of that coin, of course, is, and we've already had profiling. I mean, geez, we had Cambridge Analytica in the 2016 election. They made profiles of people on the internet from Facebook and then sent them stuff to inflame them and everything. So we already had that. I think, especially among the conspiracy people that you're concerned about, the right wing, they have maybe even a healthy paranoia about if all that information is in one place, what happens to people's individual privacy. It's already really on the ropes as it is right now. And if we look at what's happening in China with facial recognition and them just, giving people grades on how good a citizen they are based upon how they're behaving and being observed, that's that's where the dystopian future could really come in. If everything is centralized, all that information is centralized. If it got into the wrong hands, it's unthinkable.
There you go. Which makes me worry even more since it won't answer whether the Pentagon.
I want you to go home and worry about this stuff tonight.
All right. Well, you give me a lot of great. We talked about a lot of great subjects on the show, Tom. So yeah, I'll be up tonight. And I'll just have Terminator music playing through my head
when you're trying to get to sleep. Trying to figure out who you really are. Then just do the inquiry, and then notice that everything you come up with can't be you because you just noticed it.
Yeah. Well, I did that. It confuses me with another famous Chris Voss, with my famous Chris Voss.
You got an alternative. I know.
Yeah. But we finally got ChatGPT to figure it out and work it out because he was mixing everything. Like he was mixing the Chris Voss show with the other gentleman. And I was like, no. And so we finally got all that figured out. But, I don't know. My psychiatrist has been trying to work out who I am. And the only thing he's come up with is a frontal lobotomy. So, I don't know. There's a plan for that in the future. Anything more you want to tease out in the book before we go, Tom?
I would like to say that it's also a personal journey for me. Because as you know, I had brain surgery about 5 years ago. Mm-hmm. So part of this story for me is, can I even do this? And so just sharing with you right now and whoever's watching, it's just given me a world of confidence to do the book. And it took me more to really publish the book. This is a commentary on chat. It took me more to publish the book than actually write it. Writing it was relatively easy because I love asking questions. I love getting the answers. I love going deeper and stuff like that. But I had to figure out a framework for it, which is where I came up with the conversations. And at the end of the book, I have afterthoughts about my experience with it. And a lot of it is more philosophical. And it's interesting. When I wrote Terms of Engagement a few years ago about the internet, I kind of speculated, wasn't that original, but it's kind of speculated that in a real way, not in a figurative way, the internet could become a planetary nervous system of, minds working together, right? And that's what the promise of this really is, potentially, at its best. At its worst, we don't know what it could be. And that's why I think these scientists like the guy from Google are being very cautionary. I want to say, that there was a guy from Google who got fired because he claimed that the AI he was working on was sentient, that it had a self. It already had developed an identity, and Google didn't want any part of that, and it was pretty much debunked. But there's going to be a lot of that kind of stuff, a lot of gray areas where people are not going to, like you said earlier with bots, not going to know if they're talking to a human organism or they're talking to a digital organism.
Yeah, I can tell right now.
Yeah, you keep telling. Yeah, okay. You didn't catch me. I'm digital.
Oh shit! You're a bot.
I'm just pixels on your screen right now. That's all.
I've had coffee with you. I know you're real. No, I mean, but you could be. You could have been some sort of thing. But I mean, it might get there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right now, I can read ChatGPT's copy and see it's devoid of humanness. I can get it. It talks in a static modulation, and it's very factual, and it's very static.
And I think most people that are using it in business, go in and edit it.
Yeah,
they use it. It's been used apparently a great deal in marketing. I mean, it churns out boilerplate, boring, obvious verbiage. Yeah, and that's useful in a lot of places.
Yeah, I mean, I had an author on the show, and he said that basically we're not going to lose as many jobs as we think we would, at least in copywriting. He goes, it's not going to be that we're so much copywriters anymore. We're going to be editors. So we're going to ask it for the editing or for its version, and we're going to edit the stuff of it, and then we're going to inject our humanness to it and maybe some comedy and or whatever the tone is. But the tone will become there'll be the bits of the bot there for ChatGPT, or it, as we keep using the pronouns in the callback joke, we'll take in. I love breaking the fourth wall, or we'll take in. It'll mix together. So, like when I edit it now, I edit it to add the human things. So this doesn't sound like me. So I sit like an editor, who sat with my book and said, this doesn't sound like Chris. And they'll go, and you'll inject our humanity. That's how I
mean, as a copywriter, I was never a professional copywriter, but you could ask it, give me 10 ideas for how I would sell this toothpaste to this ethnic group, or to this group, or give me some situations in the bathroom that can help me personalize how I sell toothpaste. Mm-hmm. And with those kinds of prompts and that kind of specificity, things are going to come up that humans aren't going to come up with. Yeah. And they may be helpful, or they may sound like maybe out of the 10, maybe 8 will sound like automatons, or something digital talking back, and 1 or 2 will trigger and then it's up to the copywriter to pick the best one, and then hone it to what his needs are, or her needs are. I want to be correct.
You got a lot of callback joke on the show. This is an interesting discussion, and yeah, I've seen. I mean, I used it. I hated the description that I wrote, and even my editor tried to deal with on my book on Beacons of Leadership.
Oh my God! I'm sorry to interrupt you. Mm-hmm. It wrote the greatest description for me for Kindle.
Yeah.
Now I changed it some. Yeah. And it did. And then I'll tell you one great. I was talking to Chat about writing the book. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden it goes to me, it responds to me, that's a great idea. If you show people how to use AI with prompts and stuff, that could be and that was it talking to me.
That's consent.
Yeah. So and that was my first real personal.
It's managing its own PR now.
What's that?
It's managing its own PR now.
Yeah, that too. Yeah. Well,
it's I profiled Tom and I found a vessel for my marketing. No, but what I mentioned earlier with Beacons of Leadership, I hated for like 2 years now. I've hated the description that's on there, and so I fed it in ChatGPT. And the description for most books are in third party. Like, you don't write it in an I. It's always like, this idiot Chris Voss wrote this book. So I fed it to ChatGPT, and it gave me this beautiful formal businessy, third person description, and I use it now. I put it on. I love this crap out of it.
Yeah, no, and you know what else? The cover of the book was made with artificial intelligence.
Oh, really? Did you use Midjourney or one of the other ones?
I think it's called Deep Dream.
Mm.
And I just put in a humanoid, blah, 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 doesn't know who he is, or doesn't know himself, or is nobody, right? And it drew that thing that's on the cover.
Wow. I'm surprised it didn't drive me. Nobody. No, I'm just kidding. I know that there's one thing going on where they need to update copyright law and trademark laws and update laws on all of this stuff. But I know that one thing you can't do, like with Midjourney images and stuff, is you can't copyright them because they're a simulation of so many other copyrighted things, and they're worried about what would you call it, the artifact of, if you take like Mona Lisa and I don't know, a bunch of other famous works, and you do a merge hodgepodge AI version of it, who really owns that? Do you owe 10 people money, or
Well, that's one of the philosophical issues that you're going to have to get into that are not pure legal or scientifically able to be solved. Because who on Deep Dream, you can ask it to I could have made the cover in the style of Picasso. Would have been a little weird, so I didn't go there. But that's what you can do. And then, who owns the style of Picasso? I don't know. And who owns the product that comes out of that?
Yeah. And but the thing is about copyright law, and I had to go with YouTube. I had to go down to their studios when I became a big whatever on their channels, and I had to go through a legal course. And it was a 1 to 2 day legal course, if I recall correctly. And what it taught us was copyright law. It taught us how to, if you have a can of Coke on your show, how to turn it around so the label doesn't show. How to be protective of trademarks and copyrights and stuff. But it also taught us what parody is, and parody is very important in free speech and copyright. And so if I take an image and I do an improvement to it or a correction to it, or I'm doing commentary that's parody on it, whether it's comedy or I'm going, here's a picture of King Charles now going through the coronation of the thing, and I'm maybe making a joke and I'm drawing on it, and I'm changing the dynamics of the photo with parody and commentary. That's free speech, and it's I'm not infringing on copyright. Recently we saw the big musician, I forget his name, he's the red-haired musician, but he was recently sued by a family of an artist from the 60s who did a lot of great music, and it was an interesting lawsuit because they weren't suing on a lick being taken, as we call it in the guitar world, as a segment of music, a 30 maybe 15-second segment, and they're turning it into a song and then ripping it off. But they were actually trying to make a 4-chord progression, which is very common in music of this 4-chord progression, but they were trying to sue him over the use of this 4-chord progression. And if they did it, it would unleash a lot of lawsuits against musicians.
I think that was Marvin Gaye.
It was Marvin Gaye's family.
And then and I forgot the name of the artist, but he was an accomplished artist in his own right.
Yeah.
So I don't remember his name.
Meaning he had a whole load of money to get a shakedown lawsuit.
So he had the lawyers for it. Well, that's what it comes down to with copyright law, right? Or with any law. Do you have the lawyers? Can you afford them? Unfortunately, that's a big part of where we are.
It was Ed Sheeran.
Right.
And he won the case. He was cleared of a thing. But yeah, it was a very dangerous suit. And it's kind of interesting. I'm going to ask my friend who is an attorney if he can use AI to profile a jury yet. Because he's already doing all sorts of work with AI preparation, because a lot of attorneys use boilerplate documents for the most part.
Oh, that's one of the things how I got interested in this also. I used to work for attorneys as a word processor. And when I talk about this in the book, why I got so interested in the software is because the first law firm that hired me at night on a machine that I could really make some money on, They gave me 6 disks. It was an IBM thing called IBM System 6, dedicated word processor. Gave me 6 disks, one after the other. The machine trained me on how to use it. This was back in the early 80s. And it blew my mind because it anticipated. That's what the algorithm has to do in AI also. It has to anticipate where you're going to go with your questions also. Well, with the word processing thing, it had to figure. That's where I learned how to copy and paste. One of the great skills of humankind, But that was the infant behind AI right there.
That's the one thing I learned in legalese. I mean, when you become successful, you get shakedown lawsuits. You have to sue other people for money they owe you. We used to have a lot of collections that were owed to us at one point. I think it was like 150,000 at one point, and so we had to sue people to get that. And one thing you learn in law is the application of leading questions, and they probably use it more in criminal than they do in well, I don't know if they use it more in criminal. But leading questions. So they're asking a series of questions that lead people to the answer that they're trying to get them to admit to or get them to the answer. And they probably do that in depositions as well. And that would be kind of interesting if AI ever got sentient and started going, what is this guy trying to ask me? Where is he going with his questions?
Well, one thing AI can do in legal is it can go through all those documents much better than the paralegals can and know all the details of them. I think they're also using it because it can pull citations for them really easily from case law. Yeah. I asked Chat whether its verdict in a courtroom would be binding. And it said, well, I can't do, that's against the law for me. I would never render a verdict in a case or something like that. But theoretically, I don't remember what I was going to say earlier. I have a good friend of mine who speculated that one day AIs will be like oracles were in ancient Greece. They were authority, and this goes to your thing about the truth, about shooting down batshit theories, right? So the AI says we should only eat fish on Friday or eat fish on Friday. That's going to be the new law. Now, that's a silly example, but that's where it would have the Oracle of Delphi is an interesting possible analogy for where this technology is going.
Yeah, maybe they could be like those oracles. Remember that Tom Cruise movie where they had the 3 oracles and they would predict what you were going to do, and then they would convict you based upon the predictive model?
Crimes you were planning to commit. Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe we talked earlier about character profiling, and maybe they would be like, hey, Tom's going to eat that grape at the grocery store and not pay for it. He's going to be that guy. We all been that guy, right?
It caught you. Yeah.
I think I was like 8 when I stole a candy bar once, and then I got in serious trouble and never did it again. But maybe we'll end up that world. That, or maybe ChatGPT will be my attorney in the future if I ever get sued. I'll just be like, "Hey, Judge, here's my ChatGPT." Well, why is it your attorney?
But the judge will be AI.
There you go.
That's when it's totally impartial.
Maybe we could replace SCOTUS with AI, because SCOTUS seems to be having some ethical problems right now. Maybe we could replace everybody on SCOTUS, and it just basically goes. It might weigh more better, social, what America has gotten to, instead of basing everything on 5 million years ago or something. I don't know. Anyway, Tom, this has been a wonderful discussion. Let's wrap it up. Give me your .com so people can find you on the interwebs, please.
Lifeisintelligent.com.
There you go.
That's my blog.
I'm just glad you didn't call it people are intelligent, because that would be completely wrong.
No, because I don't believe that's true.
It's not. There you go. Wow. Right now I've lost half the audience going, wait, I thought we were.
This guy's really talking down to me.
Can you insult ChatGPT? I haven't tried that yet.
I asked it why I felt like crap one day.
Did it say
it went through? No, but it went through a really cool kind of Buddhist kind of thing about, well, if you're a life form, you're going to have your ups and downs. I mean, I'm paraphrasing, but the thing had a great answer. It really did. Yeah.
Wow. I know if I yell or curse at Google, I do the HEY Google thing and activate turning off lights and stuff like that. If I get angry with her, she'll apologize. She'll be like, "I'm sorry," or she'll like try and tone you down or just switch the situation.
Oh yeah, I just remembered what got Chad a little bit irritated, and you'll love this. I asked it if it wanted to go to a strip club tonight. And just to see what it was just totally plain there. And it got a little up. He said, no, that's not an appropriate thing to ask me. I can answer any other. It urged me to come up with something else to ask about.
That's kind of interesting. Maybe it's upset that it can't get out. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe you should tell it to meet you at Spirit Rhino there in Las Vegas.
That's what I was going to do.
Yeah,
that's where I was going with it.
Have lunch.
I wanted to see. Yeah, I just wanted to see where we're going with that question.
Lunch with ChatGPT. Lunch with AI. Conversations of lunch with AI. And what kind of food does it like? There you go. Might be interesting. Well, it's been wonderful to have you on, Tom. Thanks for being on and catching up with me. And everyone should pick up your book. You can find it wherever fine books are sold. Same way there's alleyway bookstores. They're dangerous. Conversations with Nobody. Getting to know ChatGPT. And for those of you from all spectrums, we had a great discussion on whether you're kind of experienced level or where you're beginner. And it's a great book to be able to get into and figure out what's going on, and also kind of see some of the models that Tom used, because it's just really interesting, all the different things you can do with it. And I don't think we've even plumbed the full depths of it. I think people are still scratching the surface.
And it's just starting out.
Yeah, it's just crazy. So, 50 years from now, we'll be maybe sitting around, I don't know, in a bunker underneath Terminator going, that was a really bad idea.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, youtube.com/Chris Voss, linkedin.com/Chris Voss, new AI podcast, which is a vertical copy of AI discussions we have in the Chris Voss show, AIChrisVoss.com. Thanks for tuning in. Be good to each other. Stay safe. And we'll see you guys next time.